In George Orwell's 1984, the government of Oceania forbids its citizens from leaving the superstate, going as far as preventing them from coming into contact with anyone from Eurasia or Eastasia. Evidence for this lies in Emmanuel Goldstein's book. It is absolutely necessary to their structure that there should be no contact with foreigners except, to a limited extent, with war prisoners and colored slaves. War prisoners apart, the average citizen of Oceania never sets eyes on a citizen of either Eurasia or Eastasia, and he is forbidden the knowledge of foreign languages. Ranked second to last on a 2019 World Press Freedom Index, North Korea is almost a real-world representation of Oceania in 1984. The same restrictions on information and travel apply. According to the nonprofit organization Reporters Without Borders, North Koreans can be sent to a concentration camp for viewing, reading, or listening to content provided by a media outlet based outside the country. Authorities also attempt to block any opposing radio stations based in foreign countries, such as South Korea. In 1984, the explanation for the party's restrictions on foreign information is that, if he were allowed contact with foreigners, he would discover that they are creatures similar to himself, and that most of what he has been told about them is lies. The sealed world in which he lives would be broken, and the fear, hatred, and self-righteousness on which his morale depends might evaporate. This is very similar to the situation in North Korea. The citizens may not entirely believe the propaganda and lies they are told about the outside world, but the access of outside information is still greatly restricted, and therefore not allowing them to fully know the truth on foreign matters. North Korea, through censorship, controls the people and enforces national unity. However, North Korea does not only prevent citizens from learning about the outside world, it also keeps its own past hidden. This is similar to one of the principles of the party in 1984. Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past. Or in other words, restricting the amount of history one learns can prevent them from developing ideas that stray from the current ruling system's ideologies. Many unwanted truths would have been brought to light. For instance, Kim Il-sung, one of the past leaders of North Korea, and now revered there as some kind of a heaven-sent genius, had actually always been seen as a normal person in past news editions, and 3 revolutionaries that were eventually purged for political reasons were actually complimented by him. If this kind of information were known to the public, then the people would be able to deduce the lies behind the government's propaganda. Therefore, in order to control the people, North Korea deliberately hides away its past events, much like the way the party controls its members and the polls by constantly changing the past. Along with the censorship of both foreign and domestic information comes with a lack of phone usage. Compared with South Korea, hardly any citizens of North Korea own a phone. Only about 40% of the population use a mobile phone. Ironically, North Korea has recently released a new smartphone with facial recognition and wireless charging. This device completely blocks foreign media, but offers features such as government-authorized apps for learning Chinese and English, an encyclopedia, a weather app, and a library app. Whereas North Korea finds itself frequently troubled by food shortages, it's a wonder that the Kim regime manages to get the resources to produce such a high-tech device. It has been mentioned before that North Korea conceals its past from its citizens, but even what occurs in the present is not always reported. The press does not broadcast anything about economic hardship or famines, and only delivers a series of compliments and cajolery to Kim Jong-un. This is similar to the Ministry of Plenty, which generates false reports about the state of the oceanic economy. The fabulous statistics continue to pour out of the telescreen. As compared with last year, there was more food, more clothes, more houses, more furniture, more cooking pots, more fuel, more ships, more helicopters, more books, more babies. More of everything except disease, crime, and insanity. Even on one of North Korea's official news websites, Rodong Sinmun, which can be viewed internationally and in English, an entire section is devoted to their supreme leader's activities. Nothing negative is reported. We have already discussed how many citizens barely have access to any information apart from propaganda and the occasional news. However, there are exceptions. A small group of regime elites who can not only access foreign news but also domestic intelligence briefings. North Korean defectors who were once a part of the state-run Korean Central Television, or KCTV, has revealed that fact. The KCTV is a major contributor to state-spread propaganda, apart from propaganda posters placed around the capital Pyongyang, as well as other towns. The propaganda often surrounds North Korea's leader, Kim Jong-un, or one of the past leaders, also known as the eternal leaders of the Republic, Kim Il-sung, and his son Kim Jong-il. Over 34,000 statues of Kim Il-sung stand all over North Korea. Every citizen is required to wear a badge of his face to show loyalty. Because of the restriction on information, the propaganda broadcasted through posters or the state-controlled media is the only source of knowledge people get. This greatly resembles the propaganda fed to children through history books in 1984, where they claimed that, in the old days, before the Glorious Revolution, London was not the beautiful city that we know today. It was a dark, dirty, miserable place where hardly anybody had enough to eat and where hundreds and thousands of poor people had no boots on their feet and not even a roof to sleep under. In order to inspire patriotism and nationalistic sentiments in the people, North Korea spreads propaganda everywhere. They glorify the nation and leaders so that people can believe that the hardships in life are in duty to their country. However, we have no way of knowing whether citizens are truly brainwashed or not. Clues for this may lie in the way propaganda is changing with the times. Before the summits with the US and South Korea, the propaganda posters in North Korea often had angry and violent anti-American attitudes, with South Korea or Japan featured as allies. However, after the peace talks, those posters have all been taken down and replaced with pro-peace messages, as well as statements calling for a unified Korea, economic progress, and scientific achievement. The former adversaries are now being portrayed as neutral and much less belligerent, in comparison with the posters once demanding revenge and total destruction of the US. Rodong Sinmun, the official newspaper of North Korea, even halted its criticisms on America and moved towards a more positive prospect of peace. However, propaganda is still propaganda. Kim Jong-un is praised by the North Korean press as a global statesman and peacemaker, though he had only made threats of war months before. This is rather reminiscent of the way 1984's Oceania changed its enemy from Eurasia to East Asia, all within a single speech. With the changing of propaganda posters also comes a new approach to KCTV. Rather than the old solemn news presenters who would coolly read their scripts, the show is now much more lively and casual than before. The reason for North Korea's decision to give its propaganda a fresh look could be the increase in outside influences, as despite their best efforts, media from the outside world does get into the country. In March of 2019, Kim Jong-un himself wrote a letter to propaganda workers, saying that mystifying the leader's revolutionary activities to emphasize his greatness will bury the truth, and that only when the people are charmed by the leader as a human and a comrade will they feel a sense of absolute loyalty. This seems to suggest a gradual change in the North Korean attitude towards foreign sources of information. Through smuggled DVDs, thumb drives, and memory cards, North Korean citizens are able to obtain more and more foreign news and entertainment, allowing them to see alternate perspectives on what the state broadcasts. Because of this rise in frequency, punishments are also growing more forbearing. Rather than being sent to political prisons or forced labor camps, it's more common now that people are only either fined or put into a detention center for a while. There are many things standing in the way of change in North Korea, but it is not altogether impossible. Though still utilizing propaganda, the government is already beginning to make changes in order to adjust to outside influence. It's likely that the amount of foreign media going into North Korea will only increase, what with organizations like the Human Rights Foundation creating a flash drive donation called Flash Drives for Freedom in order to get North Koreans exposure to the outside world, as most North Koreans possess devices that can read USB drives. Drives containing foreign media will be filled with South Korean shows, Hollywood movies, and a variety of other media, and then smuggled across the border. They are then distributed across North Korea by a black market. If ordinary North Koreans can get a better glimpse of the world, it's possible that in time, they will demand change from the government. We, as people outside North Korea, may not be able to directly ask for Kim Jong-un to change things, but we can at the very least give the people a chance to look beyond the censorship of their government.